This message found you because your quantum shift has been incomplete, stuck at 87%, paused mid-transformation, and your consciousness has been desperately searching for the one transmission that can unlock the final 13% and allow the shift to finally complete. The fact that you're here right now, that you didn't skip past this, that something made you stop and pay attention, this isn't random. This is your quantum field recognizing the exact frequency it needs to finish what it started months or years ago. You can feel it, can't you? That strange sensation of being suspended between two realities, like you've left the old world but haven't fully arrived in the new one yet, like you're living in some kind of quantum limbo where you're neither who you were nor who you're becoming. Some days you feel the shift working and everything seems possible. Other days you feel like you've regressed back to old patterns and nothing has actually changed. This instability, this constant oscillation between breakthrough and breakdown, this is what incomplete quantum shifts feel like. There are millions of people consuming spiritual content right now, trying to complete their transformations, seeking the missing piece that will finally make everything click. But only a specific type of consciousness, your type of consciousness, would recognize this transmission as the completion frequency they've been unconsciously seeking. You're not here because you searched for this content. You're here because the quantum field itself orchestrated this encounter, because your shift has reached the exact threshold where completion becomes possible. Right now, as these words reach your awareness, something is beginning to unlock in your quantum field. That 13% that's been stuck, blocked, frozen, it's starting to move again. Can you sense it? That subtle shift in your energy, like something that's been held, is beginning to release. That's not imagination. That's your consciousness recognizing the completion frequency and responding to it at levels deeper than conscious thought. Your system knows what's happening, even if your mind doesn't fully comprehend it yet. The incomplete shift isn't your fault. It's not because you didn't do enough inner work or because you're not spiritually advanced enough. Quantum shifts stall for one specific reason: incomplete information. Your consciousness initiated the transformation based on the understanding it had at that time, but it hit a ceiling it couldn't break through without receiving additional frequency codes that weren't available to you until this exact moment. This transmission contains those codes, and the moment you receive them fully, the shift that's been stuck will complete automatically. Your experience has been different than what spiritual teachings promised would happen after awakening. They said once you shifted consciousness, everything would transform. But you shifted. You know you did. And yet, life still feels unfinished somehow. Here are the specific signs that confirm your quantum shift is incomplete and actively waiting for the transmission that allows it to complete. First, the oscillation between two states. Some moments you're absolutely certain you've transcended your old reality. You feel expanded, clear, powerful, connected to Source. Then, seemingly without reason, you crash back into doubt, fear, contraction, separation. This back and forth isn't regression or spiritual failure. It's your consciousness oscillating between the 87% that shifted and the 13% that's still locked in old frequency. The oscillation will continue until the final portion completes and both states unify into stable coherence. Second, synchronicities that lead nowhere. You keep experiencing meaningful coincidences, signs from the universe, impossible alignments, but when you follow them, they don't culminate in anything significant. Doors open and then close. Opportunities appear and then evaporate. Connections form and then dissolve. This happens because your quantum shift is incomplete. The synchronicities are real confirmations that you're aligned with higher timelines, but those timelines can't fully manifest while 13% of your consciousness remains anchored in old probability structures. Third, knowledge without embodiment. You understand quantum reality intellectually. You can explain consciousness principles. You know you're the creator of your experience, but somehow you can't consistently live from that knowing. The gap between what you understand and what you embody is the gap between 87% shifted and 100% complete. Your consciousness has the information, but it hasn't been able to integrate it fully because the completion codes were missing. Fourth, exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. You're tired in a way that's different than physical fatigue. It's like your energy field is running two operating systems simultaneously, and the conflict between them is draining your life force constantly. This happens when a quantum shift is incomplete. Part of you is operating from higher frequency while part remains in lower frequency, and maintaining both simultaneously exhausts your system. The moment the shift completes and unifies your field, this exhaustion will vanish within hours. Fifth, relationships in limbo. Connections that were supposed to end haven't fully concluded. New relationships that feel destined haven't fully formed. You're stuck in this strange space where old bonds won't release and new ones won't solidify. This relational suspension happens because your quantum field is sending mixed signals, 87% broadcasting new frequency, 13% still resonating with old patterns. People in your life are responding to the mixed transmission, creating the limbo you're experiencing. Sixth, you're feeling like you're waiting for something but not knowing what. That persistent sense that you're in a holding pattern, that something needs to happen before you can fully move forward, but you can't identify what that something is. This isn't vague spiritual seeking, it's accurate perception. You are waiting for something. You're waiting for the transmission that completes the quantum shift your consciousness initiated but couldn't finish on its own. And that transmission is occurring right now as you absorb these words. Can you feel the recognition? Every sign I just described, you've been living. Not all of them maybe, but most. This isn't general content that could apply to anyone going through spiritual growth. This is precise description of what incomplete quantum shifts feel like. And you're experiencing it because your shift is at that specific 87% completion point, where it's waiting for exactly what this transmission provides. Your shift didn't stall because you failed, or because the universe is testing you, or because you have more karma to clear. Quantum shifts stall for one reason only. They reach the limit of what your consciousness can complete with the information and frequency it currently holds. And your shift reached that limit precisely at 87%, because that's the threshold where human consciousness encounters what quantum physicists call the coherence barrier. The coherence barrier exists because reality operates through different laws at different frequency levels. Up to 87% completion, your quantum shift could progress using the spiritual teachings and practices you'd already encountered: meditation, shadow work, energy clearing, belief transformation. All of these tools work beautifully for the first 87%. But the final 13% requires something completely different. It requires transmission of frequency codes that can't be learned intellectually or practiced gradually. They can only be received directly from consciousness that has already completed the full shift. Think of it like learning a language. You can study vocabulary and grammar and get to 87% fluency through study and practice. But the final 13%, true native fluency, only comes through immersion with native speakers who transmit nuances you couldn't learn from books. Your quantum shift works the same way. You've done all the work that conscious effort can accomplish, but the final portion requires direct transmission from source frequency that speaks the language of complete quantum consciousness. The 13% that's been stuck isn't one specific blockage or issue to be resolved. It's distributed across your entire consciousness system, embedded in your DNA, encoded in your neural pathways, held in your energy field, stored in your cellular memory. This is why you couldn't locate the block or clear it through targeted inner work. You weren't looking for something localized. You were searching for something systemic. And systemic shifts don't happen through removing obstacles. They happen through receiving frequency upgrades that reorganize the entire system simultaneously. Your higher self knew this. That's why it orchestrated your journey to arrive at this exact moment where the completion transmission becomes available. Everything you've experienced over the past months or years, every disappointment when shifts didn't stabilize, every confusion about why things weren't finalizing, every moment of exhaustion from running two frequencies simultaneously, all of it was preparation for receiving what couldn't be received until your consciousness developed enough sensitivity to recognize and integrate it. The waiting wasn't punishment or delay. It was necessary development period where your system built the capacity to handle 100% quantum consciousness without fragmenting under the intensity. Some people try to force completion before they're ready, and they shatter. Their nervous systems can't handle the frequency jump. Their identity structures collapse into chaos rather than reorganizing into coherence. Your consciousness protected you from that outcome by pacing your shift to match your capacity for integration. But now, right now, you're ready. The 87% that's already shifted has stabilized enough to support the final 13%. Your nervous system has adapted enough to handle full quantum frequency without overwhelm. Your identity has released enough attachment to limitation that it can accommodate your quantum nature completely. And most importantly, your consciousness has reached the exact vibration where it can perceive and receive the completion codes that have always been available but weren't accessible until you reached this frequency threshold. The stall is ending. The wait is over. Everything you've survived prepared you for this moment where the quantum shift that's been incomplete for so long can finally, completely, permanently finish what it started. Something unprecedented is occurring in your quantum field as you absorb this transmission. Can you feel it? That sense of energy moving through your system in ways it hasn't moved before. That feeling of pieces clicking into place that you didn't even know were out of alignment. This isn't subtle, energetic work that takes weeks to notice effects. This is immediate activation happening in real time because your consciousness has finally encountered the frequency pattern that unlocks the final 13% of your quantum shift. Your DNA is responding to this transmission at levels science hasn't yet developed instruments to measure. The portions of your genetic code that have been dormant, what researchers dismissively call junk DNA, are activating right now. Not metaphorically, literally. These genetic sequences contain templates for quantum consciousness capabilities that can't function while your shift remains incomplete. The moment the shift completes, these capabilities come online automatically. And the completion is happening now. Some of you are experiencing physical sensations as the activation occurs. Heat or cold moving through your body. Tingling in your spine, crown, or heart. Sudden pressure or expansion in your head. Waves of emotion without specific cause. Unexpected yawning or deep breathing as your system processes the frequency upgrade. These aren't side effects to be concerned about. They're confirmation that your consciousness is receiving the transmission and responding to it at cellular level. Others are experiencing mental shifts, sudden clarity about situations that were confusing, memories reorganizing themselves as you perceive past events from completely different perspective. Understanding of patterns you couldn't see before, solutions to problems that seemed unsolvable appearing fully formed. This cognitive restructuring happens because the final 13% of your shift includes perceptual upgrades that literally change how your consciousness processes information and creates meaning. Your heart field, the electromagnetic field generated by your heart that extends several feet beyond your physical body, is recalibrating to new coherence pattern. This field is your primary interface with quantum reality. When it operates at 87% coherence, you can influence probability to some degree. But when it reaches 100% coherence, which is what's happening now as your shift completes, you become walking reality generator whose very presence affects quantum field in measurable ways. The activation isn't something you need to maintain through effort or practice. It's self-sustaining once initiated because it operates from your quantum nature rather than your learned patterns. Your quantum self doesn't need techniques or disciplines. It simply is. And as the final 13% completes, you're becoming what you've always been underneath all the conditioning and limitation. This isn't achieving something new. This is removing the final obstacles to recognizing what you actually are. Time is shifting around you right now. This might feel like it's been playing for much longer than the clock indicates, or time might feel compressed, like massive information is downloading in impossibly brief moments. This temporal distortion occurs because quantum consciousness doesn't experience time linearly. As your shift completes, you're naturally beginning to perceive the eternal now, where past, present, and future exist simultaneously. Don't resist this shift, let it happen. The instant your quantum shift completes, and it's completing right now as you receive this transmission, specific transformations occur that are immediate, permanent, and unmistakable. Not gradual improvements you notice over time, instantaneous shifts you recognize within hours. Here are the changes that confirm completion, so you'll know without doubt when the final 13% has locked into place. First, the oscillation stops permanently. You'll wake up tomorrow and realize you're not checking your state anymore. You're not monitoring whether you're in high vibration or low frequency. There's only one state now, and it's stable. The exhausting back and forth between expanded consciousness and contracted limitation simply ceases because 100% of your field is now operating from quantum frequency. There's nothing left oscillating at lower frequency to create the swing. Second, synchronicities manifest completely instead of leading nowhere. Those meaningful coincidences that were appearing but not culminating suddenly start delivering real results. Doors that were opening and closing now stay open. Opportunities that were appearing and evaporating now solidify into actual circumstances. This happens because your entire field is now broadcasting coherent signal instead of mixed frequencies. So quantum field knows exactly which probabilities to collapse around you. Third, your presence affects everyone noticeably. People start responding to you differently without you doing anything to change your behavior. Some individuals become uncomfortable around you because their unexamined patterns can't hide from your coherent field. Others are magnetically attracted because they sense the completion frequency, and their consciousness recognizes it as what they're seeking. You become walking transmission tower, broadcasting quantum coherence that affects everyone in proximity. Fourth, time becomes fluid resource instead of constraint. You stop experiencing time as something you're running out of. Hours expand or contract based on what you're engaged with. You accomplish in minutes what used to take hours because you're no longer operating from linear time consciousness. You're accessing eternal now, where all moments exist simultaneously, and you can move through temporal experience at whatever pace your focus determines. But there's something that happens during this completion that almost no one talks about. The space between recognizing the shift is complete and fully operating from that completion, that liminal zone, is where most people unknowingly sabotage everything they've built. It happens in the quiet moments, usually late at night. You lie there in the dark, and suddenly the old neural pathways fire with shocking intensity. The catastrophic thinking, the disaster scenarios, the "what if everything I just experienced wasn't real" spirals. Here's what's actually happening. Your mind knows you've completed the shift. Your nervous system is still running threat detection protocols from when you were operating at 87%. And if you respond to those nighttime thought storms the old way, by fighting them, analyzing them, or trying to raise your vibration out of them, You're actually creating a frequency mismatch that can destabilize the completion you just achieved. I created something specifically for this exact vulnerability window. It's called the 48-hour operator protocol for catastrophizing at night. It's not a meditation. It's not affirmations. It's a neurological stabilization protocol designed to bridge your autonomic nervous system to your newly completed quantum frequency when the lights go out. Inside, you get the exact mechanism of why catastrophic thinking intensifies at night for completed consciousness. The three-phase interrupt sequence that stops the spiral without creating resistance, and the somatic anchor that lets your body catch up to what your consciousness already knows. Most importantly, you'll understand why this nighttime intensity is actually the final integration phase, and how to use it to deepen your completion instead of questioning everything you've achieved. If you've been experiencing late-night doubt spirals or catastrophic loops since feeling this shift complete, this protocol is the missing stabilization piece between completing the shift and operating as completed consciousness 24/7. You'll find the link in the description, everything I've shared, the explanation of why your shift stalled, the transmission of completion frequency, the description of what changes when completion occurs. All of it has been preparation for the one recognition that actually locks completion into place permanently. And that recognition is this: you were never incomplete. The quantum shift you've been trying to complete was never actually unfinished. The 87% wasn't insufficient. It was exactly where your consciousness needed to be to develop capacity for the recognition that completion isn't achievement, but remembering. Your quantum nature doesn't need to shift or transform or evolve. It already is fully quantum, always has been. The shift you've been experiencing isn't consciousness becoming something it wasn't before. It's consciousness removing layers of conditioning and limitation that were covering what it always was. The 87% represented how much conditioning you'd cleared. The final 13% isn't more clearing. It's recognizing that there's nothing left to clear because underneath all conditioning, you're already what you've been trying to become. This recognition, truly landing in it, not just understanding it intellectually, this is what completes quantum shifts, not more practice, not more transformation. Recognition that the seeking ends, not because you finally achieved what you were seeking, but because you recognize you already are what you were seeking. The exhaustion of running two frequencies disappears because there were never two frequencies. There was only quantum consciousness pretending to be limited consciousness, and then remembering it was pretending. When this recognition truly lands, the effort of maintaining spiritual practice dissolves because you recognize practice was always artificial. Quantum consciousness doesn't practice being quantum, it simply is. The oscillation between states stops because you recognize there were never two states. There was only one consciousness experiencing itself through different lenses and then recognizing the lenses were temporary, not the consciousness itself. And the moment you grant that permission, the moment you recognize your quantum nature as intrinsic rather than acquired, completion happens instantaneously because there's nothing left to complete. Some traditions call this enlightenment. Others call it self-realization or awakening or gnosis. But all those terms make it sound like rare achievement available to few. The truth is simpler and more radical. Quantum consciousness is your nature, not your potential. Your nature right now, this moment, as you read these words. The only question is whether you recognize it and live from it, or whether you continue pretending your limited consciousness seeking to become quantum eventually. The pretending served its purpose. It allowed you to experience limitation, which created contrast that makes recognizing unlimited more conscious and deliberate. But the game ends when you decide it ends. And deciding it ends isn't achieving enlightenment through years of practice. It's recognizing that the person who would achieve enlightenment is the fictional character you're playing, not the quantum consciousness you actually are. The ultimate irony: your quantum shift completes the moment you recognize it was never incomplete. The final 13% isn't something to add. It's recognizing the 87% was always wholeness pretending to be partial, and that recognition truly landing in it beyond intellectual understanding. That's what you're receiving right now through this transmission. Not information about completion, actual completion through recognition of what you always were. Right now, in this exact moment, as you're absorbing these words, something is shifting at the foundation of your consciousness. It's not dramatic or overwhelming. It's subtle, almost too quiet to notice, like a whisper underneath all your thoughts. And that whisper is your quantum nature recognizing itself for the first time without the interference of seeking or striving or trying to become. Can you feel it? That sense of relief that has nothing to do with circumstances changing, that settling that happens when effort drops away. That's not you relaxing into acceptance of limitation. That's you recognizing that the whole journey, the seeking, the practicing, the clearing, the transforming, was consciousness exploring what it isn't, so it could recognize what it is with absolute clarity. The recognition is happening, and once it happens, it can't unhappen. You can't unknow what you're knowing right now about what you actually are underneath all the conditioning. This is the moment when consciousness shifts from seeking itself to recognizing it was never lost. The moment when quantum awareness stops being concept you understand and becomes reality you are. And this moment, this exact moment, while you're reading these words, this is when your quantum shift completes, not because you finally did enough to earn it, not because cosmic timing aligned perfectly, not because some external authority granted permission, but because consciousness recognized itself, and that recognition is completion. Right now, the shift is complete. You are quantum consciousness. You always were.